Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening. I'm so excited to have my friend Christina Luna here today. She is a really brilliant astrologer and channel. I have received 3 readings from her now, and I just love the way that she articulates all of the energies and all of the themes that come up through the lens of astrology. And I've been wanting to have this conversation. This is our 3rd time trying to have this conversation. And we're finally here ready to talk about whatever comes up through like sort of astrology for the collective and how we are shifting into new paradigms, new energies, all kinds of good stuff, as well as her awesome spiritual awakening story, which is one of the best ones I've ever heard. So welcome, Christina. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I appreciate it so much.
So do you want to give us a little bit of a background of like who you are and kind of what brought you to astrology and sort of what you consider to be your unique take on astrology that, that you serve through?
Oh, sure. Okay. So from my perspective, every single person has the ability to connect to their own way of experiencing divinity. And we have all different types of life experiences that reveal that divinity to us. And every lifetime is like this magic code or this I don't know, combination of personality traits and experiences and hardships and struggle and then like passing through levels and gates. Like every person has these very unique life experiences that reveal their way of viewing divinity, which is literally just being present with life. Like it's so simple, being so present with what is happening in the current moment. And our lifetime is actually, it presents us with all these different conditions that would take us away from that presence. What I believe astrology is my unique way of seeing that, of like reaching that divinity and then delivering me so much of the presence that I've realized that I want to share my special way of reaching that with everyone else. Like I'm like, wow, everyone can experience this. Everyone can be present. Everyone can find their way to divinity. And I use astrology as like a little map to that field of consciousness through like super practical things. Like, for instance, today the moon is moving into Capricorn, and we're recording this on the 17th. And Capricorn is this energy of like talking about the legacy that we leave on the planet, talking about the way we impact other people. And so we're having this conversation talking about how our presence with our life is impacting and serving other people. And I don't know if I'm making sense in this moment. What I am present to is that my gift is reminding people of what their unique combination to experiencing life is. And a lot of people have these thoughts and ideas that where they in some ways judge the way that they are. And when they receive an astrology reading and they understand that they're naturally a part of these cycles, that they're naturally in flow with their nature, that connects them to the divine field that they're expressing and experiencing through.
Yeah, I love that. I love it so much. And it really resonates with me in this moment too, because this morning I was recording some codes for my Light Codes membership. And one of the ones I was recording was really just talking about how, like I said, you're not your role or your career or your modality, your certification, whatever. You are the vibrational medicine. You are like the vibrational gift. And I kind of went into this effort to explain how divine and how perfect, and I could sort of feel like how it just sounds like lofty bullshit if you're not really like ready to receive it. And because it sounds so simple that it's like you just, I don't know, the skeptical mind just wants to dismiss it. But just as you were saying, like divinity is found in the presence, and it's just, it's like it's already there. You are already divinity. You just fully experience yourself in the present moment, and that's really all there is to it. And it's so hard to articulate, but so simple.
And we create these complicated things. And so we talked a little bit about like, why did I even start exploring astrology? And it came at a point when I was married, I was in a traditional marriage, and I had like done all the things right. My husband and I built a house together, and we had a son, and we had money, and it was like all the milestones were hit. And I didn't realize, but I was going through my Saturn return. I didn't understand what that was at the time, but what that felt like for me was like really, really intense pressure. And I have Saturn in Virgo. And so for me, that pressure was like strongly pressing on me to become a sovereign human. And at the time in my marriage, I did not feel sovereign at all. I felt very, very dependent on all the roles I was playing as a mother and a wife and a woman. And, also I had a lot of restrictions on like what I thought I should look like. And so I was putting a lot of pressure on my body, and I was putting a lot of pressure on just my whole personality. And I also, since I was putting so much pressure on myself, I was perceiving that my external relationships were putting a lot of pressure on me too. So I perceived that my husband was like super controlling and domineering, and even to the point where I thought maybe he was being abusive, like emotionally abusive. And at this point, I've really sussed out that like the emotional abuse that I may have been experiencing externally was actually really a reflection of the way that I was treating myself. It took a lot for me to understand that I put so much pressure on myself internally that it was manifesting externally. And because this pressure was so intense, I actually experienced like a pop where I completely disassociated with everything in my life. I disassociated with every role. I disassociated with anything that I valued. And I had a physical experience. My ears popped and blood came out of my ears, and
Wow.
the hair on the top of my head actually broke off. And it was like this super intense physical experience that then led me to just hearing voices. And if I had been inclined to explore mental illness, I may have considered that I was experiencing like a psychotic break.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of exploring that, I would just go out running and explore the space of what I was hearing. And it was really disorienting at first. I am only able to look back now and understand like, oh, this is what was happening. Now that I can see how fragmented my personality had become due to the conditions I put on myself, that pressure I put on myself. And the fragmentation, the voices that I was hearing were actually, they were parts of me trying to communicate with me again. But at the time, it just felt like, it actually felt like there were wise parts of me trying to give me messages. Yeah. And the only way that I could receive those messages was by hearing them audibly from my environment. And so that's how it started for me. And there was about a 2-year window where I actively made space to listen to these voices. And as I made space to listen to these voices, which were parts of me, I started discovering that the voices actually had like an archetypal theme to them. Mm-hmm. And the way I was able to put that together was I started studying ancient religions. I started studying mythology and, Roman and Greek mythology and Egyptian mythology, and started realizing that there are these like really common archetypes that humanity's psychology experiences all the time. And it took me some time to figure that out, but at first that just felt like, wow, I'm going to get a journal page for each one of these voices and just have them kind of explain to me who they are and what they care about. And as we did that, it started to make sense to me that during certain moon periods, there were certain voices that came through.
Wow.
And as the voices came through, I was able to understand that there were these cycles. There's a cyclical nature to this. And as the cyclical nature continued, I started realizing that there were greater cycles to life that we were also experiencing. And I was able to put this on paper, and it ended up revealing astrological cycles, which was pretty profound.
So were you basically like channeling the sort of archetypes of the different signs, or like sort of the energies of astrology, like the signs and the houses and the planets? Was it that, or like, and you've kind of figured that out, or was it even like sort of broader than that?
It's what I understand now is every person is made up of these parts.
Mm-hmm.
Every person. And with every astrology reading I do now, I'm able to see all those parts. And we have, as humans, personified these parts with the planets. We personified them as these heavenly bodies. And the thing I understand now is that, yes, there are these archetypes of the zodiac. These are like lights or temples that shine on us during certain times of the year, and then there are these planets that are kind of like characters in a play. And we have all of the characters within us. And what I started to realize was my personality separated into these parts in a way that I was able to learn about each one. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it was like the planets were speaking to me, but they weren't the planets. They were parts of my own psyche.
Yeah.
And they're parts of our psyche. Every single person has parts of these psyche. We have our moon emotional body. We have our strong, like masculine principle. We have our feminine receptive. We have our timekeeper and the person that has the goals for us. We have our revolutionary. We have the part of us that knows that something has to end and that we must kill it. We have this like shameful part of us. We have this wounded part of us. We have this like exalted part of us, this part of us that just is this expansive, joyous part of our soul. And what I got to experience was all of these parts separately having a dialogue. And that translated, when I actually discovered my own natal chart, I was actually able to see, wow, these parts of me are definitely showing up in different areas of my life. And the more I studied my natal chart, the more I realized I'm not unique. I'm not a unique human that's hearing all these parts of me. Every single person has these parts. And for whatever reason, I was given the ability to converse with myself in this way through a lot of adverse pressure. But these are parts that are, if you talk to anyone, you can actually suss out which parts they're showing up as, because we channel these parts in any given moment. Sometimes we channel masculine energy to get things done and put us on task and accomplish goals. And sometimes we channel that feminine energy to fully have a sensuous, enjoying experience of receiving and experiencing. And sometimes we put ourselves to the grindstone and we really use our Saturn energy to, get the work done and do the hard thing and get over the obstacles. And sometimes we express the kind of rebellious spirit where we know something has to change and we have to shake the chains to get that free. And most of us are moving fluidly through these characters. Some of us have favorites that we channel more than others, but we have the capacity to draw on any of these archetypes at any time when we need them. And the cool thing is we were all born with our little recipe of characters. The characters have these little homes that they live in, and they have parts of our life where they really shine, but those parts get amplified by the current energies, by where the planets are currently. We can sometimes amplify those characters, and if we know which characters are being amplified, we can actually go with the flow of when the characters are meant to kind of step in and channel them in a really natural and practical sort of way.
Yeah, and you're doing this fascinating thing right now where you're really consulting your natal chart and the current transits together, right? And allowing it to guide you on a daily basis, right?
Yes. And sometimes we're all human. Sometimes I resist it. Sometimes well, here's the thing. Every single person has a place where they are healing a wound.
Yeah.
Every single person has a place where they, try to suppress shame. Every person has a place that they like resist. They have like, it's not a saboteur, but it's a place where they resist growth.
Mm-hmm.
And I have those present, but by allowing myself to look at the map, I can actually see, like, call myself out on what's being, activated or what that really is about, and be in a greater, I don't know, grace, I guess, with that process.
Wow. That I'm just thinking as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about what an incredible tool that must be for the specific energy. And so for everybody who's listening, I'm not an astrologer at all. It was like my first love, my first dip into spirituality when I was 16, 17, I think. Once you got to like current transits and overlays on top of natal charts, I was like, this is too much for me. So I abandoned it. So this is just me intuitively feeling the energy. But what it feels like to me is there's this hugely intensely accelerated collective ego death happening right now, where we're experiencing it on an individual level, but it's also the literal human collective, like the collective consciousness that is comprised of billions of humans also having an ego death. And ego death is so uncomfortable, and it means like those energies you were talking about, like the inner sort of resistant saboteur, like those things that are ready to be seen and healed and released, all those shames, all those burdens of regret and guilt and unworthiness, and all that pain and trauma is ready to be released as part of this process. But we have that internal desire to resist it. And this seems to me like it must be such an amazing tool to really surf this wave, because it's happening whether we want to cooperate with it or not, is how it feels to me.
You're absolutely right. So everyone was talking about this Lion's Gate and this amount of energy that was approaching. It's hard to make it real tangible, but essentially what I was experiencing was I had behaviors and ways of relating in my life that were not optimal.
Yeah.
And when the energy started to intensify, my body experienced really intense sickness. Like I had really strong, like a lot of sneezing, a lot of mucus. Like my body went into a like immune response. And as I was in that immune response, fears were popping in. Like I would talk to someone, they're like, maybe you have the Delta version of COVID. And, I like heard all these different thought forms come in. And I know that whatever I give my energy to, that's what's going to like be created within my field and accelerated. And so as I heard these different fearful ideas coming through in a lot of different areas of my life, I was like, wow, I have a choice right now to choose what this means for me. I have a choice. And that ego death that we were experiencing, or that I experienced, was my ego is prepared to protect me. And sometimes the way it protects is it makes me feel afraid of certain things. And then when it makes me feel afraid, I go into these behaviors that actually behave in a way like I have to protect myself from something I'm afraid of, which was creating more of what I need to be afraid of. And I was like, whoa, I can slow this down. I can really feel that my ego can choose those things. And I can be so grateful. Like one night I was up coughing, and I was upset at the coughing, like, oh, I can't stand how much I'm coughing. And then I started realizing the cough was part of my ego protecting me from getting pneumonia. Like the cough was even a representation of my ego protecting my lungs from mucus. And my ego wants to protect my body from death. And so I actually was like grateful for the coughing reflex. I became grateful, like, what if I can just, like, oh my gosh, thank you for trying to protect my body from getting pneumonia. I'm so grateful. And the energy of being grateful changed my frequency. It changed my state. And it changed it from like, I don't know, hating my cough to like loving my cough. And as I loved my cough, I actually felt less mucus. I felt less of a need to cough. And the less of the need to cough actually like helped me to rest and recover and actually sleep. And just on a super mundane level, I was able to see that those like really strong, fearful, protective ego identities were just like melting away. And the more they melted away, the more I was able to practice like, no, everything, like actually that fearful thought is trying to protect me. And guess what? I know that everything is going to be okay. I know that I'm protected and I'm secure and I love myself unconditionally, and that all the things I'm meant to do in this world are happening effortlessly. And the more I was able to bring that energy in, the more that the fearful ego was able to kind of rest and transform. And then I recovered very quickly after that. And so on a very tangible level, I experienced the ego death as just a relaxing of the fearful ego, a relaxing of that ego that would constrain me and, you know, put me in strong protective mode. And this thing that is emerging is feeling so at ease with the timing of life and so at ease with the natural process of health and recovery and presence.
Yeah, this is so, it's just making me laugh so much that as we're talking about timing, and we talked about it earlier today and earlier in the week and everything, and because literally in another code that I channeled, I was talking about how we can't suppress these things that want to come up because it's the same as suppressing mucus. The mucus is trying to clear away the pathogen in us. So it's just so funny, the synchronicities. But yeah, it's really, and it sounds like a little tiny mundane thing, and yet it's in those little human experiences that when we have that lucidity that like really sets us free to see beyond the illusions that were previously limiting us. So like moving beyond just survival, which is where that fear comes from, to keep us in, you know, to so that we survive basically. And I think this collective ego death is really opening the door to allow us to move into leading with our creative abilities. So like you said, like recognizing, oh, I have a choice. Like literally with everything we experience, I have a choice in this moment. What am I going to make this mean? It doesn't only mean one thing objectively. It means a whole bunch of things, and I get to choose which one I want to harmonize with. And then when I harmonize with that, it transforms like my experience of the matrix. So yeah, I just think this is really amazing and so timely, because also I know that you have this course that you are starting, because I'm signed up for it. I'm very excited about it, about the embodied experience of astrology. And I would love, I feel like I'm never at my best these days. Like my baby brain is so legit and I can't quite articulate things properly. And I feel like I understand the way that you explained it, but I'm going to give it to you to explain it in your way because it's so beautiful and so perfect.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about astrology now. What I like to do is I like to introduce the practical experience and then talk about why astrologically we're having this practical experience. And you talked about the collective ego death. Part of that is the sun currently is in Leo. And Leo is a point in our conscious evolution toward individuation. So to break that down, we start in Aries, we start in March, we start at the equinox, we start in the springtime with a seed of what we want to manifest in this cycle. And as the seed grows from Aries, from the spark seed to Taurus, which is the nourishment of the seed, giving the seed everything it needs, to Gemini, which is like checking the seed to make sure that all of the growth of that seed and the conditions of that seed are being met properly through our intellect, to Cancer, which is nourishing the emotional needs of that seed and making sure that the environment changes if necessary to continue the seed's growth. Now that we're in Leo, the seed is really beginning to express because we've made it through this cycle where we've like addressed all of the needs of the seed all the way down to the emotional needs. The expression of the seed is happening now. And man, the expression of the seed when it moves into Virgo, that's when we come into the harvest of the seed. So if we were thinking of like some kind of project that we were trying to launch or some type of way of being that we were intending for ourselves to be, we are at the point where we bring something all the way to its authentic expression, or it's authentic. It's like it's like if you're growing tomatoes or something, you're like, wow, these tomatoes are going to be pretty incredible. They're like going to be super juicy. They're going to be super, and we know with complete assurance that the harvest will come. And so we continue to just double down on the nurturance of that tomato, and we begin thinking about what are we going to do with all these tomatoes because there's so many on the vine, right? So the ego death that we experience during this time in Leo has to do with like really taking account of like, who have we become this cycle? Who are we now? We've come through so much. So what are we really expressing right now? And what are we going to do with the harvest of who we are when we move into Virgo? And so in, astrological terms, we already have our feminine expression. She went through Virgo, kind of, bringing us up to speed with our health and the way our body feels over the last month. She's now in Libra, so she's starting to harmonize with other people. The masculine principle is in Virgo now, saying you need to get enough sleep. You need to make sure your diet's like good. You need to make sure that you're paying attention to your body and you're behaving in a way that's aligned with your health to prepare for this harvest. Mercury, our like verbal expression, is giving us all the insights that we need to double down on our disciplines, double down on our practices. Virgo is that energy of like, the harvest is coming. And if you don't know how to like preserve and cherish and value your harvest, you're going to sort of like miss out on sharing that harvest with other people. And there's no fear there, but we always feel this pressure during this time to like, okay, like there's a reason why we feel a little bit of pressure, like, okay, the winter will come soon. How do I actually, really take stock and preserve what we have here so that I can share this with others through the winter, or I can sustain my life through the winter. And so this time we're in right now, we're meant to kind of feel this like, I've got to take care of my health. I've got to take care of my, like people usually start school during this time too. Our children start school, or we would begin classes. It's like, I've got to like get my syllabus. I've got to get my schedule, my routines. And so there is that little energy, but it's meant to, I don't know, bring us into greater alignment with the next part of the spiral, which is very other person centered. And so we come to individuation at this time so that we can bring that person into a sharing place as the winter progresses. I don't know if I answered your question. I'm sorry.
Well, I think I was just leading into like this beautiful course and kind of how you understand astrology and what you're sharing through the course so that everybody who feels aligned with taking it can kind of learn how to navigate these energies as they come through.
Okay, right. I go off on these tangents. Well, what I was called to do is create a daily reminder. So every person has their personal chart, and every day there's an area of life that's going to be get a spotlight on it. And when we know what area of our life is being spotlighted, we can actually really focus on that and attune ourselves to this field of spotlight. I don't know. It's like this. Can I just say the ironic thing about all of this is we don't actually need any of this. Like, I think with what we talked about in one of your readings is we can literally just wake up and we can be present to what is, and we will naturally
Yeah.
attune to these energies. So I created the course not because I feel like humans need this daily reminder, but because some humans really love to double down on routine. And some humans are really going to love touching in every single day with a bit of a reminder of like, oh, what is my nature? What is my way of being super present right now? What could I focus on today that would actually just put me at peace with knowing that presently everything's happening perfectly? And so I structured the course because in a way that gives daily reminders, but also gives like an overarching perspective on the cycles that we're experiencing externally as well as internally.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And I agree. Like, well, it's kind of like we were saying at the beginning of the conversation, there's really nothing more complicated to it than just being in like that, complete awe-filled presence with being alive and being like, holy crap, like I'm a human. I have a hand. I can touch things. I exist in this environment. I'm having these experiences and just really being in it. There's nothing more complicated to it than that. And yet, we forget that. We
Yeah.
forget and we take for granted and we get immersed in the distractions from it. And so it sounds like this is for the people that it speaks to. It's like you said, and a really fantastic touchstone to sort of like daily bring yourself back to what can I do. And I think those daily practices are so important though. Like when I always imagine that I must annoy the crap out of everybody who comes to me looking for information about psychic activation, because I am kind of saying like you have to meditate or in some way cultivate like a daily or almost daily practice, because there's just no other way apart from having it like you did. But even then, you made the choice to either like to see the voices you were hearing as, or to, I guess, to just be present with them and go running and explore them, right? And let them be something, or let them reveal themselves to you. But really, like your psychic gifts aren't coming on board without you meeting them there and you creating space for them. So I think these daily touchstones, these access points, in a way we do need them, but not in the sense that like we'll be screwed without them, but more like they really, really help to ground us in the not mystical aspect of our divinity.
Yeah. Well, like, for instance, I'm just going to talk about what's happening right now. Today's the 17th, but tomorrow is the 18th. And what I know about tomorrow is that Mercury, which is a planet that connects us to our intuition, some would say to our psychic gifts, some would say to like epiphany or to just our mental capacity to know. Mercury's in Virgo. So while Mercury's in Virgo, that's a place that Mercury feels really good because Virgo loves to think about details. The light of Virgo is pay close attention, look at the details, get it on paper, look at the grounded processes, look at the step by step. And so Mercury loves to kind of dig into like the logistics of things. So Mercury is there and it'll come conjunct. So that means that in the sky, if you had a telescope, you would look out and you would see Mercury and Mars are in the same line from our perspective from Earth, they're going to be coming together. And Mars is our masculine principle, the things, the ability to take action. So tomorrow, like not so much today, we could start feeling it today, but it's not quite in alignment quite yet. But tomorrow there will be this like, I know what I need to do to take action on. I know what will be healthy and aligned for me. And I have the energy to do so. I have the energy to execute. And it'll give us this like, it's a kind of a masculine energy of like, whoa, I'm going to write the blueprints. I'm going to put this on paper. I'm going to create the processes. I know the step by step. I know the exercise plan. I know the nutrition plan. I know the way I'm going to bring my life or my finances or my schedule into congruence with who I am and who I need to be. That alignment's happening tomorrow. Now imagine that you're feeling this energy, and imagine that you also received a confirmation from a little message in the morning, like create space for yourself to get things down on paper. Let the inspiration strike you. Give yourself time, write it in your journal. The clarity you're going to experience today will be really potent. And if you leverage this, you can create a plan for yourself that you'll be able to execute for the next 3 months. Even more if you want to, next 6 months. So imagine that you got that impulse and you're like, wow, okay. And instead of like taking a nap today or like driving in my car, it could happen while you're driving in your car. But what if you also got the extra seed planted of like, yeah, while you're driving in your car, get the plan. I'm validating to you that plan is going to be super important to you moving forward. And you're going to want to write this down. Like that seed planted is going to give our psyche permission to actually make space. And we're going to maybe use that energy to like solve other problems in our life. Like maybe there is something that's been kind of like languishing. Maybe something that has to do with our finances or our relationships. We've got some problem we haven't been able to solve. Tomorrow, the energy will be super ripe for solving that problem. And even more specifically, let's say that you have Virgo in your 9th house. For you, actually, Amy, you have Virgo in your 6th house. I know because I just remember your chart. So for you, you're probably going to get some huge insights on how to create greater sovereignty for your day-to-day life. It's like somehow you're just going to optimize your home space and like what you need in order to feel like your personal discipline or your personal schedule is really supporting you. And let's say you've got Virgo in your 1st house. This is going to be a plan for like how you want to like reinvent your identity, how you want to reinvent like who you show up as in the world. So first of all, if you know that the energy is going to be potent for that, then secondly, if you know what area of your life this is going to be highlighting, you can have that extra awareness to put the energy into good use. It's like you're going to get a stream. What if you leverage that stream in a direction that'll be the most optimized for you personally? And imagine that you had this guidance every single day. Like imagine that you were able to just like, whoa, the flow is going to come through in this flavor. And when it comes in this flavor, I'm going to direct it to this area of my life. And could you imagine living each day in accordance with that? How effortlessly present and how moving with the flow and the tide you would feel yourself. And I created the course to be 3 months long. So you'll have 3 full months to practice this, which will create an energetic habit. Whether or not you continue following it after this 3 months is, it's non-essential. You definitely could. Like you'll have the tools to be able to check in with where's that flow now. But we also could just like have the confidence to navigate once we've done it for enough cycles.
I love that. It feels like it's repatterning the very inorganic rhythms that we've created for ourselves of what we think, like how we need to organize our time, how we need to show up, and just that, like when you think, oh, today I have to get this done because it's the only day that I have to do it, or blah blah blah, and you don't really feel the authentic energy behind it. And it's sort of like recoding ourselves through the permission of, all the transits and how they land for us personally on the optimal way to move with the natural energies, the organic energies, and just sort of seeing too. I imagine like if you actually follow it over the 3 months, seeing that like, oh, everything gets done. Everything gets done. And like there's this, those tea bags and they have a little tag that says something. One of my favorite ones is a Lao Tzu quote that says, nature doesn't hurry, yet everything is accomplished. And it's kind of reminding me of that, like how when you're moving with those energies in their natural state of flow, taking the rest when that's what is like highlighted and brought to the surface, and then taking aligned, inspired action. What a magical combination. I'm excited for tomorrow. Taking aligned, inspired action when the energies are in support of that, how everything will get accomplished. Everything. And in a more magical and exciting way than if we try to push it and fit it into these strange structures we've told ourselves that we have to follow.
Absolutely. Like yesterday, for instance, I was like, it was my first full day to like be productive in quotation marks, right? And a part of me was like, oh, I've got this day. My daughter's in her first day of school. I could totally, go home and get all this stuff done. And all I wanted to do was sleep. And I laughed at myself because at first I was trying to press that ego will, right? And then I realized, oh my gosh, Christina, you got to practice what you preach. You know that while the moon is in Sagittarius, in the place that it's at, it's actually moving through your 12th house, which is the place where your cycle ends. It's the place where you actually die. That part, the cycle of the last month is actually dying for you. And if you're feeling a need to sleep, you absolutely should sleep, because tomorrow, when the moon moves into Capricorn, that's when you enter your first house of being reborn into a new cycle. And luckily for you, you have a recording of a podcast scheduled, which you didn't even realize was, you didn't even actually pay attention to the cycles to get scheduled. It just so happened that the day that you're going to show up as this new version of you, you have an opportunity to step into that new version and express yourself. And you're going to be teaching a class at a time when it's absolutely hitting a point where you're sharing your grounded foundation with other people. So I got this confirmation yesterday of like, even when we're not paying attention to these cycles, our bodies and our nature are aligned. The tiredness I was feeling was in no way resistance or anything. It was my body saying, you need to completely allow yourself to turn off and let this old cycle be completely done and die, because tomorrow you're waking up as a fresh new person.
And that's where the permission part comes in.
Yes, there was so much permission. As soon as I laid down, my entire nervous system just unraveled. I just completely surrendered and gave myself to it. And I had beautiful dreams. I felt like it was so emotional. Like I felt so much love for myself, just feeling the permission to know that I'm so cared for, that that the earth naturally holds me, and that I can't mess it up. The only way that I push against the flow is by having the ego will to push against it, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I remember having that feeling a while ago, that like incredible deep emotional love where I had something that I was like obligated to do, and I really needed to go to bed early, and I just decided to just leave that obligation or delay the obligation basically and just go to bed. And I woke up in the morning to these words, like it was like, you are perfect. But I knew it was me saying it to myself. It was like, I'm just this like incredibly deep self-love, which really is like literally all any of us really wants anyway, is to feel that incredible love connection. Can you talk a little bit about that, sort of the line between allowing these energies to give us permission and to show us, remind us that our bodies know already and that it's okay to listen to our bodies, versus planning our lives around it in a way that feels disempowered. Because what brought this question to mind is when you said that, oh, and luckily I had a podcast scheduled for today and I didn't even realize, like, you didn't look at your calendar and say, oh, Amy, Tuesday is available, and that would be the perfect day because, the moon is entering Capricorn, which is in my first house. And right. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I'll admit initially astrology was absolutely, first it got me out of a place that I felt was kind of crazy or very disorienting. Like it was my savior at first because it gave me some order to all of the information I was processing. Then it started actually becoming a crutch. I was like, I felt paralyzed unless I knew what was happening astrologically. So there was a period of time where I couldn't do anything unless I consulted the astrology. And I think this is a phase in any sort of like spiritual development that at first it's like the medicine that you need to bring you into awareness. And then all of a sudden it turns into the thing that keeps you from just surrendering to the motions of life. So I went through that, and I went through a period of time where I didn't even look at the astrology. I like totally abandoned it. And in fact, I was even concerned that perhaps it wasn't healthy for me. And I went through that. And then I found this like gentle balance of like, all right, basically what happened was I did this inner tube journey down this river, and anyone who's inner tube down a river knows that you have a couple of options. You can like sit in the middle of the inner tube and just let it like bounce you from bank to bank, and like I hit like sticks and trees, and like my hat got knocked off, and because I was just letting the flow of the river take me wherever it wanted to go. And I was like, whoa, that was interesting. I got beat up a little bit. Actually, I was bleeding at the end of that journey because there were some like hairy spots, and I got like stuck on a sandbank at one point and had to like get back in. So there was that experience, which was fine and totally valid. And then I got the inner tube and I started over, and I was like, all right, I'm going to see what happens if I actually put my hands in the water and co-create my experience with the flow. So then I would like, oh, I don't want to go against the bank. So I'm going to just like swim a little bit here. And then I'm going to enjoy the flow of this. And then I don't want to go into those trees. So I'm going to swim a little bit. And I kind of found this gentle balance between being with the flow of the astrology and actually like choosing where to go and like leveraging like the thicker parts of the river. Like there are some parts of the river where you can hit that flow and go a little bit faster, and it's a little bit fun, and you don't get on the sandbank and you're like, wow. So there is a co-creation. We're not meant to just be like victims of the astrology, or it's like I had a codependent relationship with astrology for a minute where I was like, oh, I'm gonna experience this super big square with my wound, and maybe I'm going to be like jacked up. There was that, but I knew it was coming. And so I really doubled down on my health, and I really like focused on creating like good boundaries for myself, emotional boundaries. And when that moment came, I was like, I felt really empowered because I knew that moment was coming. And I flow through it harmoniously. And so for me, like there is a balance. Like you definitely don't want to just like, oh, I don't know, I got to see what the astrology is going to say before I do anything. There's like, yeah, it's a balance between trusting the flow and seeing what kinds of experiences you actually want to have and navigating through those experiences with your choice. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it totally does. And I think what it ultimately comes down to is like all of these things offer us the opportunity to connect with ourselves as the driver, basically, is what you're saying, right? Or to be driven by the thing. Like I'm thinking about how, like if somebody gets married during Venus in retrograde, and I'm like, maybe it's like Venus and Mercury in retrograde, and because they don't know. And then like you could think like, oh, they're gonna have a crappy marriage. It's gonna be really challenging and blah blah blah. But maybe that's why they got married during Venus and Mercury. And I just knew somebody who got married at that time, and I was like, wow, that's an interesting choice. But he didn't know. And I think that his marriage is actually fine. That stuff, it's like you said, like we feel it in the body, and anyway things are going to be what they are, and the point is not to avoid all of the sandbanks and completely always avoid the trees and not get banged up and bloodied up ever. It's just more like knowing that we don't have to, like there we have tools, we can sort of paddle with the flow of the energies and sort of decide what we want to do with our life experience and everything that it brings. It's not meant to steer us out of conflict and out of hardship. That's just that's part and parcel of the human experience.
Absolutely. If I hadn't gone through the river the first time with like total hands free, I wouldn't have had some of the pain I had, but that pain taught me something really valuable. Like every time I got stuck or poked or whatever, I learned something. Pain is like such an incredible teacher.
Mhm.
And because I learned something, I like navigated those spaces a little bit differently the next time. And this is true of every relationship we have. We can navigate into like really painful situations in our life, and when we're really present to the pain of that, we're like, whoa. And in fact, if we're present to the pain and we can actually even link it to some sort of like event that was happening astrologically, we can say, wow, that was really teaching me about self-worth. I really got that lesson. I'm going to totally feel the pain of this so that I can really become aware of this pattern in my life the next time it comes around. And so the next time it comes around, you're like, oh, I remember when I sacrificed my self-worth from the last time. And I remember the pain of that. And this time I'm going to really hold my self-worth as sacred and see what happens this time when I pass through those same gates. And so it's not like that'll be painful in a different way. Maybe the pain of that is that we actually hurt someone's feelings. And so it's not that situation avoids pain. It's just, okay, now I'm experiencing like, wow, this person really kind of got into a pattern of expecting me to sacrifice my self-worth for them. And now that I'm not doing that, they're actually in their own process of pain they're going to have to learn from. And so, man, pain is inevitable. We're going to experience pain in our life no matter which tools we use. It's just a matter of like, is this pain going to be meaningful? Is this pain going to be like a resource for understanding something or opening our heart even more to presence, like greater awareness of these situations that cause us pain? Are we going to make it meaningful, basically? Because we have pain that we don't really get the lesson from or refuse to like take responsibility for that pain. And then we have pain that we really take responsibility for and we really like juice as much experiential wisdom from as
Mhm.
possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like our pain has the opportunity to, or it offers us the gift of like being alchemized basically and sort of unlocking dormant codes of wisdom that we already carry, but like they're encrypted. We can't fully embody them and express them and share them until we've been through the experience and been really present with the pain. And that's sort of often the key that unlocks those codes that we carry within. Do you ever look into the astrology for the collective, especially as we're going through complete chaos and craziness that only gets more intense?
Yeah, actually, I create videos every month for the collective. And the place that we're at in our collective shift, what I perceive is that we just emerged as a collective through a portal that was deep, intense medicine. It brought up all of our shame and shadows. And it like you explained, we just went through a massive ego death. And also it was a huge upgrade. Many people are experiencing more unconditional love for themselves now. there have been some experiences that really cause us to have to step into this unconditional love for ourselves. And because we've done this shift, we're actually moving into a time where we take our awareness back into our home and our personal lives to create whatever changes we need to reflect that new unconditional love. And so right now the collective energy is very much like, wow, some of us are saying, wow, I've got a lot of work to do. And some of us are saying, wow, I've really set myself up for an extraordinary life through all of this. In any case, I'm very grateful for everything I've experienced, because I'm emerging onto this new way of seeing the world. And yes, there's a lot of external pain happening. And oftentimes external pain, being able to witness external pain, is mandatory for knowing what kind of changes we have to make.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of emerging onto the shores and like taking a real strong present look at the reality of our lives and the reality of the world, and realizing, okay, if we're going to have this life where we are totally congruent and aligned with ourselves, we have to make these changes now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, it's super aligned. It's really interesting to talk to you, because I don't consult the astrology at all. Like, I knew that I could tell that the Lion's Gate passage was part of that intense energy that was coming up, but I really don't know why. I don't know any of that stuff, but we're receiving really similar messages, which I always find very validating, that a bunch of us are decoding it through different sort of lenses and different languages, but the messages are the same about like needing to witness that chaos and needing to witness that wounding and that pain and the suffering, and how that is an important part of transmuting it, that it's really not, we can't just bury our head in the sands around it. Full disclosure, like at various points, that's been my strategy, is to just be like, I got to deal with my own life. I can't look at this stuff, but I can feel that it's really being a part of this upgrade requires us to take inventory of things in a really honest way. And that part of that taking inventory process is to see it and not go into a state of despair around it, but like see it and hold a frequency that there is, so for all of the pain that we're witnessing, there's an equal and greater potential of something more fulfilling, something better, something more beautiful.
Yeah, and all of us are walking around, the service that we do as humans is we're all walking around either blessing or cursing our world. This is a concept that I learned. I learned this from a teacher that I had. His name was Donnie Epstein. He explained that part of the service we do for humanity is we can either consciously bless, or we can subconsciously curse our reality. And what that means is, by observing our reality, we are actually judging what's happening. And when we judge what's happening by observing it, we are impacting it. So whatever we're observing, we impact it by our observation. And when we consciously see something from a certain perspective, we can bless it. And if we are judging that as like something that's like negative, or like we're all going to hell in a handbasket, or like those bad people or whatever, we're actually cursing that situation. And so every single person has been given this power to bless or curse all of the things that we observe. And the goal is to become this servant to the reality we observe by consciously blessing it, by seeing it as it is and better, by seeing it as it is authentically, and that it maybe is in a state of healing. Like, there are some things that we can see it and observe it as it's in a process of dying. That could be actually blessing it. Not that by like, wow, that needs to really end. That's like an old cycle. That's an old paradigm that is seeing its final like death rattle. That could be blessing it as well by allowing our sacred gift of creation and destruction to be in equal balance. And so if we become those conscious servants of what we observe, we can choose in every single moment to either bless or curse what we are looking at. And man, the most relevant way that we can do this is actually like paying attention to the relationships we're in and the situations we find ourselves in, even if it's in conflict or if we judge another person's process. If we're judging it as like, ooh, those people are whatever, like, I don't, I try not to even put my bandwidth into like thinking that something won't come to its most evolved state, whether that's if the most evolved state is that it actually comes to completion, or that the most evolved state is it's coming to a healing, or it's coming to a reconciliation with itself. There's this ability we have to take this on. And when I look at the world and I see the world transforming even through adversity, even through chaos, I'm like, wow, that is so coming into alignment with love. That is so like coming into a destructive chaos that will release so much energy in its system that it is reborn as a like more coherent, loving, healthy system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love the way you put it, that you try not to give any of your bandwidth to the idea that anything you're witnessing is not in the process of coming to its most aligned state. Like I really, really love that. It's because it is a process, and it's kind of like that. I mean, I think about that with all the codependent, healers in the world, and that wounded healing approach that we take often, where we feel like we need to fix other people, when really we're just supporting them in this leg of the journey in their own process of coming into their, highest, most aligned expression. And that we don't need to fix anybody. And certainly when I look at my life, like I know there are a lot of people who love me who at various points could have totally judged, did certainly totally judge that I was making bad choices and things like that. And it's because they loved me and wanted me to be doing better. But I was in the process of coming into my most aligned state. It's just that part of the journey it just required me to appear to be farther away from that state, and that everything is returning to love. I really really feel that. I feel like that sort of is a way of encompassing it without being too Pollyanna about it and being like everything's love and light. It's like sometimes it's hideous and awful, but it can still be coming back to its most aligned state or progressing into its most aligned state.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that we can feel despair about right now.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of fires where I live, so the skies have been just gray, and it's really wearing on the psyche of a lot of people, and it's hard to see like massive forest fires as not very destructive. Right. And yet even that, even the process of huge forest fires, if I'm responsible for the way I energetically see this, I'm not like digging my head in the sand. I see the destruction, and I'm also seeing like, wow, see how much the smoke is impacting so many people. This smoke is reminding people that the world is burning. And when the world burns, things are transformed. It creates space for something new to be planted. There's the literal of like the amount of acreage that's lost. And why is the acreage being lost? Is it because there's been less water? Why has there been less water? Like, can we actually see the truth of this and not like ignore the fact that the smoke is here? And is that happening in our personal lives as well? Is there something being clear cut in our lives right now? And can we see it as an opportunity to plant something new, and to have to not like, oh my gosh, the world is dying, like the whole world is burning, and man, we're not leaving our children a good legacy. Sure, those thoughts can exist, and what what is the bigger piece, the bigger picture that we're seeing about that? Like, what if that is the case? If we're feeling those feelings, is it possible that there's something being activated inside of us as we have those feelings to live our life more aligned with sustainability? You know,
Mhm.
like could this process, the burning of these forests, could that activate some sort of process within myself that creates higher sustainability and greater awareness of the fact that I live in a global environment, that my life affects other people and that other people are affecting me, and this connects me and my neighbor because we're both witnessing this together. And what if we pull together to create higher sustainability? You know, there's like always that awareness that's available in addition to the doom and gloom that we may be experiencing.
Yeah, exactly. It's not one or the other. It really is both and it's sort of like, so you can feel the doom and gloom and you can let that hit you and reverberate through you. But rather than staying there and setting up camp there, then it's like, and then the other thing that it gets to be as well.
Mhm.
Will you tell us, just before I let you go, will you tell us whatever it is that you want the listeners to know about your amazing course? And I'll put the link in the show notes so people can easily find it and access it.
Of course. So this class is 3 months long. It starts on August 23rd and it runs till November 21st. There will be 12 like lectures that orient you to the ins and outs of astrology. So it is like an astrology 101 course. But in addition to that, everyone will receive daily clarity on what to focus on for that day. And the purpose is to help every person look at their own astrology chart, to understand their own astrology chart, and have the ability to navigate that through the cycles of this fall. So you're going to get like an introduction to astrology, and you're also going to get this like daily attunement to your own chart. And the outcome of this is that each person in the course is going to have a real close, like a very conscious understanding of their personal recipe for flow, their personal cycles, the cycles that they can fully accept and embody for themselves. And so that is, I think some people will maybe be able to look at other people's charts, their loved ones' charts, and help them to orient as well. But the main purpose of the course is to actually really know yourself. And when you know yourself personally through the map of astrology, you can actually know more about the cosmos, because when it's like as within, so without, when you know your personal map, your personal way into the flow of divinity, you actually can understand divinity even better. And not that it's something to be understood by any means, but it is something to be in reverence of. And why not be in reverence of who we are naturally to begin with? And then let the reverence of who we are be reflected in the cosmos.
Absolutely. I love that. And I know that one of the options that you have is to combine this course with a natal chart reading with
So,
you. And
yeah.
I had one of those and it was so beautiful. Like I honestly, it was amazingly validating because I was like, oh yeah, this is everything that it took me this long to figure out that this is what I am, but now I get to hear it like reflected back to me that this is who I am. It's not just who I have told myself that I am. Like it is who I am. It was really, really beautiful.
Yeah, I did. I created an option. So there's an option just to take the course and get the daily, but you can also just get the reading in addition to the course. That is a one-on-one. It's more than a natal chart reading. In fact, what you receive from that one-on-one with me is a really detailed, like, okay, like for instance, if a person has Capricorn in the first house, then they're going to have a little spreadsheet that's like, whenever the moon is in Capricorn, you're focused on this. So it's like a kind of a map to their personal chart that will allow them to traverse the course. Not everyone will need that, but I offered it because it is kind of a beautiful addition to, and having one-on-one, I don't know, it makes it more personal. You and I have a lot of one-on-one contact. So yeah, that there is, in today's day and age, I believe there's just so much value to be able to actually speak face to face with another person. And so I put that in because I don't know, that it's a lot of people prefer to have that really personalized interaction.
It was one of the best gifts that I've ever given to myself, and I highly recommend it. If you look at the options and you're like, oh, should I go for it? Yes, you should go for it, is what I'm saying. That's my endorsement. You should absolutely go for it. Well, this was such a beautiful conversation. I'm sure, like, I know I'm wanting to have you in my Facebook group. I'm sure we'll get together again for the podcast because there's so much interesting stuff, so much interesting understanding of energies that we share through different lenses, different perspectives. But I feel like really beautiful stuff comes out when we talk with each other.
I do too. And I felt, I'll be honest, I felt a little like the energy amplified so much when we first started talking. I was like, whoa, what am I even saying right now? I was a little like overwhelmed by just talking with you. And so I trust that whatever we spoke about was absolutely what we were supposed to talk about. But if we talked again, I would love to get into the more specifics about the day-to-day astrology. So whenever that opportunity arises, I would even love to serve your community on a regular basis by giving like little like 15, 30-minute updates on what's happening astrologically.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know my community would like be over the moon for that. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad that it worked out. Third time's a charm. And thank you, beautiful listeners, for your time and your attention. I completely trust that you will have gotten so much out of this conversation. And you know that I love you so much. I appreciate your listenership more than I can ever say. And until the next episode, take care. Have a beautiful day or night wherever you are. Hello, beautiful being of shadow and light. If you loved this episode and you want more, you can join my new membership, Light Codes. This membership is the place where you will receive all the light codes that I am channeling on how to navigate the intensifying energies of this next phase of the rapid awakening and ascension of the human collective consciousness on Earth. But also all the light codes on how to step into our highest selves, to activate our soul mission, to harness our magic and power as creators, and to manifest the highest timelines for ourselves and for the collective. To find out more information about light codes and all the ways to work with me, see the link in the show notes or visit amybelair.com. Thank you so much for being here with me on this episode. I appreciate you more than my words could ever say. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share, and I will catch you on the next episode.